Joining us today is Raven Parker, an early career technologist whose experience spans IT support, cloud infrastructure, and full stack development. With a strong drive to learn and a record of solving complex problems through data and collaboration, Raven brings an inspiring story of growth, impact, and the future potential in the tech industry. Raven, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you as well for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm glad we could be here. So let's kick it right off. What moment in your career has taught you the most?
It's kind of hard for me to pick just one, but if I had to choose, probably my last internship. I was at Own Company before they were acquired by Salesforce during the summer of 2024. They gave me like an option for several projects, and I ultimately went with redesigning the customer facing status page for the entire company essentially. There were several issues they had at the time, which were like clarity on the information provided to customers. They had a few issues with like API integration and some licensing issues since most of the people that they wanted to have like editing access to the page couldn't get it because they had a limit on who could be a part of it. So they would have to constantly like change who has access and everything. So for that, I essentially played as like my own project manager. I had to handle like requirements gathering. I did vendor analysis with through like 9 different ones for status pages. And I also designed the final solution for the page once the vendor was decided on. I learned how to be like super effective with time management as I only had 2.5 months to do it, of course, and redesigning an entire page is a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
But I also learned the importance of cross-functional collaboration with teams. So I met with multiple teams, including UI UX, customer support, IT, engineering, and several other teams just to determine what was really needed for the new page, both on an internal and external standpoint. So the cross-functional collaboration and presenting at stakeholder meetings was a little daunting for me because I tend to also be more shy, but it helped me with building confidence in my work and showcasing that in a way that I guess could make sense for people regardless of like their background or like their particular field.
Very interesting.
It also allowed me to share like multiple goals with teams since they all had like different things they wanted from it.
And
So
that's a lot of learning.
shared effort.
A lot of learning you did there.
Yeah.
That's great. So, well, when your colleagues or team members describe you, what three words do they consistently use?
I would think they'd be supportive, collaborative, and to some degree leader like. I tend to take a proactive approach to solving problems and often I'll share like my findings with teammates, whether that's with, hey, I found a solution, here's what XYZ is and how we could probably implement it further, or um, even just going to them for help with finding a solution since it's something we should all end up using at the end of the day. I tend to enjoy breaking things down for other people. So I often find like analogies since tech isn't always easy for everyone to understand. And in a full company, of course, naturally, not everybody's going to be technical either. But finding ways to break that down in ways for everyone to understand is, it's a little fulfilling for me, if I'm being honest.
Well, that's important.
Yeah, of course. So being able to like uplift others and move forward together is always something I strive to do. And I think people also really notice that.
That's really very important for stuff and not always all that often today. So that's great to hear. So, outside of your professional achievements, what passion project or personal interest has taught you skills that make you better at what you do?
Ooh, there's a few here actually. They all tie
Hmm.
together, but I'm a big like creative person. So I've been in art, music, and I do video gaming, of course. All of them are about like setting goals and finding different ways you can reach that
Hmm.
goal. You'll learn as you go. You practice to further enhance your skills or generally just get better at it. You might not always see like immediate growth or improvement, but you'll come closer and closer to that the more you persist. Other times it's also about like, I guess, analyzing yourself, seeing and asking what can I do to make this better? Or in what areas can I still improve? What am I already doing well? And if you're struggling to find it on your own, of course, seeking feedback and criticism from others is also just a big plus in finding room for improvement. You're never going to finish a project or game without having that kind of mindset, at least to me, at least. I said at least twice. But yeah, it would be mostly those three: art, music, gaming.
Those are three important ones. So I like that. Can you tell me about a mentor?
Yeah. My current mentor, Stefana Muller, she was my last manager at OWN. I don't know her current title, but while she was at OWN, it was the SVP of Infrastructure and Operations. I don't know her current title because OWN was recently acquired by Salesforce, so I don't know exactly what changed there. But she genuinely looks out for those around her. She's also the founder of Long Island Women in
Hmm.
Tech. So I know she created that because of like the lack of support and resources in her area, of course, especially for women. Despite having Long Island in the name, of course, other people from other places are able to join. But she actively strives to lift up those of like less fortunate backgrounds. Similarly to me, she doesn't come from a traditional background in terms of education.
Hmm.
Also, as a woman in a field that's male dominated, she's pretty inspiring, especially since she's gotten like to leader like positions. She proves that it's possible to excel in positions and end up in leadership roles regardless of your background or your identity.
That's important stuff. I know
Yeah.
we are blessed to have a few different women on our team. And one of our podcasts is all about women in tech. And so I've heard so many of the horror stories, and it's great to hear the inspiring stories as well. So I really appreciate that. What book or podcast has influenced you?
Though not a book or podcast, I'm really big on poetry actually. So I guess if I had to choose a poem, I'd probably go with The Road Not Taken by Robert
Hmm.
Frost. It's all about like curiosity, exploration, and taking risks, finding your own path and not really following the crowd. These are all like really important themes to me. I've always been like a curious person, but as a kid, I was definitely more of a I just want to fit in, people pleasing kind of person. I guess it's a little ironic knowing I was a bit tomboyish despite being a woman, and a lot of my interests were more male oriented. I also wanted a more like male oriented career, if you will. Like tech was always interesting to
Hmm.
me. At one point, I wanted to be like an architect or go to space or some other stuff. But there's mostly men in those fields, and I wouldn't necessarily belong. After reading it, I guess I had some kind of like newfound resolve to pursue my own goals regardless of my identity. Who cares if I'm a woman in tech if I can still do the work?
Exactly.
I've always known I'm just as capable as my male counterparts. And even if I'm the only woman in a space like full of men, I'm as capable as those around me. And I can create that space that welcomes other people of different identities.
I think
So
that's amazingly
I guess
important.
that
No, I
is,
think that's amazingly important.
yeah.
And as you were speaking, all I kept thinking is we need to get to the day where it's not about is it a male dominated industry? It should be just, well, are you the best capable person? And if you are,
Yeah,
fantastic.
exactly.
But the one bit of insight that I can share from the Women in Tech podcast is that there's a lot less lines for the ladies' room at events. So there's some silver lining there.
I guess it's a plus, yeah.
All right. So if you could spend a day learning anything from anyone, living or historical, who would that be and why?
Ooh, I had a really tough time picking here, but I guess maybe Marie Curie. She's had such a huge impact on just science and chemistry as a whole, and I'd love to hear the insights of a woman in her position. I forgot exactly how long ago it was that she was
Hmm.
alive, but I think it was about 100
Hmm.
years ago. I may be wrong, but given that that's a time where women were expected to stay at home and just like take care of the house, take care of the kids, feed their husbands, and whatever, I would love to just hear her insight on pushing through and breaking that barrier there. I think it's mainly that, if I'm being
Hmm.
honest. I'm sure she'd be, like, super inspirational.
I would imagine so. And you're not the first person that said that, but it is so important. And you're right. She was able to break down so many barriers and push through things to achieve what she did. It is truly inspiring.
Yeah.
So let's wrap this up with, what do you see as the future of your industry?
I mean, at the moment, it is a little rough given, like, hiring freezes and what's the other one? Layoffs, yeah.
There's been one or two of those.
Um, it's constantly those, but hopefully as that clears up and things get more, like, worked out with I would hope there's still lots of room for progress, of course, and it's a little less daunting to get into the field and continue pursuing those kinds of goals when there's always going to be room for
Hmm.
improvement, and tech is the space for that, in my opinion.
I completely agree. So it's outstanding stuff. I really appreciate it. We'll put all the ways people can reach you in the show notes and all those details. And I think any company would be lucky to have you. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you as well. I really do appreciate it.
MTMG, guidance that empowers.